let's face it, this isn't a usual job market. There's a lot of people out there experiencing a very palatable sense of frustration and taking things personally, even when they're checking every single box. They're doing all the right things. They're still experiencing ghosting and being rejected for roles that they should be getting interviews for. And I want to break down a reaction of one job seeker in particular in her experiences of frustration and kind of utter disbelief at how the job market is going. And I think a lot of people can relate to this because, let's face it, most people experience exactly what it is that she's experiencing. But I think that there's some learning to be pulled out of this, a little bit of perspective, and then maybe what we can do differently going forward, if anything. So we're going to watch the video in its entirety first. Then we'll come back and watch it again, break it down, and give a little bit more insight into what's going on behind the scenes, why these employers are acting the way that they are. Hopefully it'll give you a little bit of insight into what's going on behind the scenes with hiring, and then give you a little bit more perspective and strategy on how you can hopefully increase the number of callbacks that you get deeper into interview processes, etc. So let's watch this video, then we'll come back and react to it.
I am so I get it. Things don't work out for a reason, but it just feels like nothing ever works out, and it's really starting to piss me off. So there was this job that I was perfect for. I cannot explain it enough. Everything that they needed, I hit, and I do have a very unique AI specific editing job. I work on AI bots. That is exactly what the role was. Whatever, it's fine. And it was for a really cool company, and stop crying. But I use their magazines every day. I need to stop crying. I use some of their newspapers and magazines every single day for my own personal interests and stuff. And so they posted this role, and I'm so excited for it. And I had messaged the SVP on LinkedIn, and I was like, hey, this is my resume. I really fit this well. And he goes, yeah, the role is based out of LA or New York. Is that okay? And I said, yes, I can relocate to LA. I live in Chicago. Totally fine. And so he is like, great, I'll set up a call, sets up the call with the talent director. And I get on the call, and I've been prepping so hard for this interview because I want it so bad. I get on the call with the talent director. First question he asked me, where are you located? And I said, Chicago, but I'm willing to relocate to LA. He goes, I'm going to have to stop you. I can't put you forward in the interview process anymore. And I was like, okay, even if he's like, you need to be based directly in LA or New York right now, because we do day before notifications for the interview process. And we don't want people spending money to get here for our interview. One, I feel like that's a discretion I should make, which maybe it is the right one. Yeah, I shouldn't be spending money to go on this interview, but whatever. So then I asked him, I said, hey, the guy I messaged on LinkedIn said him and I could chat. So I'm wondering what standard protocol is, because now I'm talking with you. And he was like, oh, I work directly with him, referred you to me, and that's why we're having this conversation. I guess first of all, nobody has applied for this fucking role, because I've been making sure that nobody's applying, or at least on LinkedIn that I can see. And it's been posted for at least 2 months now. I hit every single qualification. So it's can we not just bend the rules a little bit and just give me a fucking Zoom interview? And so I guess I'm just really upset. I'm just really upset because the last job that I interviewed for, they decided to cancel the position right after they had I had finished all the interviews, and they said, if we uncancel it, it's you. And it's just why does nothing work out? I'm really starting to lose my marbles here. And I know the job market is so hard for everyone, but I'm just at this point, they don't want to hire people. They don't want to hire people. They're just posting the jobs, and they don't want anyone in the role, because they had 8 people apply for this job, according to LinkedIn. And it's at least half of them probably weren't qualified, and probably more than that. So I don't know what the they want anymore.
Now, she brings up a really interesting point here, and I don't know if this is a universal law of some sort, but every job I've ever landed in my career has always come very smooth and easy. It's the path of least resistance. I'll go through other job interviews, and you'll be asked to go through all these endless hoops. They'll always have some reason why they can't get you hired, interviewed, you move through the next step in a timely fashion. But the jobs that I've actually landed, everything just kind of moves smoothly. It's almost like they know you're the candidate when they start interviewing you. And it's how can you put yourself into that position? Well, there's a lot of things that you can do to align yourself, resume writing, interviewing skill, etc. But it just seems like for the jobs I've ever landed, at least, it's kind of like the parting of the Red Sea. You're able to walk right through everything. All the distractions seem to be moved apart. And what she's experiencing is those are seeming to happen less and less frequently. So her observation of what's meant to be should be is generally a truth. But what she's also experiencing is that it's getting harder and harder to be the one. And that's also the truth right now in today's market.
So there was this job that I was perfect for. Like, I cannot explain it enough. Every thing that they needed, I hit. And like, I do have a very unique AI specific editing job. Like, I work on AI bots. Like, that is exactly what the role was. Whatever, it's fine. And it was for a really cool company. And like stop crying. But I use their magazines every day. I need to stop crying.
I want to point out job search and the emotion behind job search because I don't think this is talked about enough. Job search tends to be a very emotional thing for just maybe even just careers in general are a very emotional thing for people, but not necessarily the company. The company is kind of like this, it's an entity. Even the people who are, hiring managers, the people behind the scenes, human resources for sure, everything is a business transaction to them. They're not thinking twice about the interaction that they've had with you, the job seeker, the candidate, etc. Whereas the candidate puts all this energy, puts all this emotion, ties an outcome very closely to their own sense of self-worth. Whereas the company just looks at a candidate, says, they're not a fit. We're looking for this very specific profile. We may or may not even be motivated to hire the position right now. But it's very transactional for them. And so there is an inherent disconnect. And it's hard not to take things personally when you're being rejected based on somebody somewhere is judging you and determining whether or not your background is aligned to their specific role. And it's hard to be judged. It's hard to feel that you're a perfect fit and then being told no because it's an ego hit. We all have egos. Every one of us does. And nobody likes to be told that they're not good enough. And in most cases, it's not that you're not good enough. It's rather this specific role has this specific requirement, or this is what the hiring manager wants, this very specific type of person. And I've worked with those hiring managers before. They're extremely picky and they have a very narrow vision of what they want. And does that make that person, the hiring manager, bad or wrong? No, it doesn't. It just means that they're very specific. And if you're not the right fit for that role and you don't know what it is that they're really looking for, especially when you're just at the application level, there's some ways that you can kind of figure it out, but you've limited information as a job seeker. But you're being rejected for roles, even though she feels on paper she's the right fit, there's clearly something in her background that is getting the hiring teams to not be very open to her candidacy. But that's a personal thing. Like, it's an emotional thing. And I totally understand where she's coming from. I think every one of us has been at this level of emotion and frustration and just like the waterworks in her case, like that level of emotion. If you haven't experienced that in your career, I'm going to call you a liar. Every one of us has experienced that. Every one of us has been there, whether it's in job search, whether it's being in your job itself and having to deal with some sort of a failure or some a-hole that you got to work with and you had some interaction with, maybe a bad interaction with a boss. All of these things are very common. Every one of us experiences this. And it's just like this is the like emotion, like the real raw emotion of job search and why so many people are frustrated.
I use some of their newspapers and magazines every single day for like my own personal interest and stuff. And so they posted this role and I'm so excited for it. And I had messaged the SVP on LinkedIn and I was like, hey, this is my resume. I really fit this well. And he goes, yeah, like, the role is based out of LA or New York. Is that okay? And I said, yes.
Okay, so a couple of things here. Number one, I love that she's leveraging networking to try to get deeper into interview processes. We absolutely want to be doing that. If you're not doing that and doing what she just described, then you're missing out on opportunities and at least getting somebody to look at your resume. Even if it's not the right outcome for you, at least you are getting your resume seen by a hiring authority on some level instead of it just going into the abyss, a black hole of job applicants. The second thing is let's talk through the willingness to relocate to another market. I would say in 99% of cases, maybe 95% of cases, I would not recommend this be a strategy that you would pursue unless the job opportunity is a very strong job opportunity. It has to be an alpha employer in your career vertical. Define alpha employer however you want, but the alpha employer should be a company on your resume that's going to move your career forward. Other employers are going to look at it and say, if you've worked for that company, then you've got the goods. In other words, it's going to make your resume look that much stronger. That would be the first criteria. The second criteria is you have to assume that if you take the job and you relocate to another market, that job could go away within the first 6 months or a year. You have to at least go in with the assumption that that could happen. And if you're in that new market, especially if you're somebody that's young, doesn't have a family that you bring with you. If you're relocating a family, that's another consideration. But you're going to be in an area where you're going to be unemployed without any support structure around you. You're not going to have friends, family to help you out when times get tough. You're going to be really far away from them, and you're going to be on an island. And in a lot of cases, people get stuck in locations that they don't even want to be in. So if in her case it's LA, she's in Chicago, this job is in LA. If she's not really wanting to be in LA, this is a very risky move to move for a job. Like personally, I would never move for a job, especially if it took me outside of a target market or to a place that I wouldn't have normally considered or actively would be open to moving to because I just like that area or it gets me somewhere closer to family, etc. I've seen this happen too many times where people get screwed, especially in a job market like now, where this is even more amplified. Companies are very short tenured for a very short time. They're laying people off. The cycles of layoff are getting shorter. They'll make these investments in people. And let's face it, hiring somebody is a very expensive venture. If you just say you have a $70,000 a year job, to the company, you've got a $70,000 a year salary, plus the benefits, plus the training costs, plus all of the other ancillary costs that we're not considering. It's easily over $100,000 in investment. And that's a major investment for a corporation, for one singular person. Companies are very willing to take the hit on an employee that they just hired and invested all this money in if their business model changes or if they need to squeeze profitability out at the end of the year. We're finding that people are no longer able to get traction. Things have become much more fractional and very transactional. There's no longer this idea of long corporate loyalty. And it doesn't mean that there's not one edge case there, here or there that happens. There are some companies out there. But as a whole, we are finding that the market is much more transactional right now. And as such, making moves to new markets for a job opportunity, and that being the only reason why you're considering it, is a very, very risky proposition. So go into it very eyes wide open, have an exit strategy, make sure that if you move there, that you're willing to be unemployed in the next 6 months, and would you still like to be there? I'm not trying to come at it from a fatalistic perspective, but I think you have to be realistic, especially in today's market. So in her case, I just don't know if this would be a strategy that I would do. Even if you're feeling desperate, like I just need a job, I'm going to move to a new location. I just think it's a very risky proposition. There's other things that you can do to bridge the gap. And I know people don't like to hear it about side income streams, etc. This is exactly why we want to have side income streams. So we're not reliant on any one employer for our entire subsistence to be able to survive, pay our bills.
I can relocate to LA. I live in Chicago. Totally fine. And so he is like, great, I'll set up a call, sets up the call with the talent director. And I get on the call, and I've been prepping so hard for this interview because I want it so bad. I get on the call with the talent director. First question he asked me, where are you located? And I said, Chicago, but I'm willing to relocate to LA. He goes, I'm going to have to stop you. I can't put you forward in the interview process anymore. And I was like, okay, like even if he's like, you need to be based directly in LA or New York right now, because we do like day before notifications for the interview process, and like we don't want people spending money to get here for our interview. One, I feel like that's a discretion I should make, which maybe it is the right one. Like, yeah, I shouldn't be spending money to go on this interview, but whatever. So then I asked him, I said, hey, the guy I messaged on LinkedIn said him and I could chat. So I'm wondering what standard protocol is, because now I'm talking with you. And he was like, oh, I work directly with him, referred you to me, and that's why we're having this conversation. I guess what
Okay, so she messages the SVP, which I don't know if this is the hiring manager or not, but she messages the SVP, and the SVP tells her about the position a little bit, and then hot potatoes it over to it sounds like the recruiting department, this talent director, I'm assuming is human resources or a recruiting team of some sort. If the SVP is indeed the hiring manager, typically they'll want to hot potato it over and have some barrier between them and the candidate because they're working on their own stuff. And if you've got these candidates that are coming into your inbox that are not aligned to the position that they're expressing interest in, the hiring manager potentially could get a lot of people bugging them about jobs. And I will say, as like a recruiter myself, that's a very real thing. People will get a hold of you, and then they won't be like not have. And I'm not saying that this is her, but I'm just saying in general, people won't be well aligned to the role and not necessarily have the self awareness that they're not a good fit for the role. And in some cases, there's a pretty big gap between their fit versus what we're looking for. And once you respond back to this applicant, then what tends to happen is now they're constantly writing you, calling you. I've actually had one guy who has still, as of about, this has been now probably a year or so, but for years this guy was writing me about roles in a company that I hadn't worked for 5 or 6 years. I would still get these messages from him saying, "Hey, why can't you give me an interview for this role? I saw this role come up. You never want to call me. You never want to give me an interview. And then, hey, why don't you get me in contact with the hiring manager over there?" And he was like really forceful and not very pleasant of a person. But he got my contact information and was contacting me about jobs like through LinkedIn. He would like send me these messages and I wasn't even working at the company anymore. And so there is a tendency for the hiring manager to want to put a little bit of a barrier between them and the candidate if the candidate's not the perfect fit for the job. Now, if you're a really good fit for the job, it could be a different story. So she finds herself talking to the talent manager, and the talent manager effectively gives her an excuse of, we're not considering candidates outside of the geographic region because you have to be located here right now because we're going to be interviewing people immediately. Basically, when you read between the lines, is what this means is that they deemed her to not be a fit for the role pretty immediately. So this is what we call like a resume screen. So in her mind, she feels that she is a very good fit for the role. I haven't seen the job posting. I don't know like what the details of the position are, but for whatever reason, this hiring team decided that she wasn't a good fit, even though she came in through a back channel. Could be location, could be what's on her resume, could be total years of experience, could be a lot of reasons. We don't know why. But for whatever reason, the hiring team determined her to not be a good fit. And here's the thing. If you're a really, really strong fit for the role, what they're looking for, but you're outside of a geographic region, I've never had a company tell me that they wouldn't, or a hiring manager tell me that they wouldn't consider, at least talk to a candidate who is an excellent fit for the role if they're outside of the geographic region. It may make it more challenging and complicated, but if you come in as a superstar candidate and you've got everything that they're looking for and you're like the perfect profile, you maybe even come from a competitor that they admire. I've seen companies move mountains. I've seen them at least go through an interview process. I've seen them even give out relocation packages when they weren't even meant to or planning to give out a relocation package. I've seen all that stuff happen. Now, today's market might be a little different. Maybe they have a lot of candidates in the LA region that they're already considering, or maybe they're just not highly motivated to go through the process. But I do feel like his excuse was kind of weak. Like this idea of we're going to be interviewing people and they need to be here immediately, which is really bad candidate experience. You're just expecting a candidate to drop everything that they're doing in their lives to go in and interview for you, which could be a cultural indicator of that company. To me, it sounds like he was just feeding her a line of BS to kind of like get rid of her. Like that's what it sounds like to me. And it's from her perspective, I agree with her. If she's a good fit for the role, the hiring team has moved her on. Now you got to keep in mind she's actively soliciting them. She's applied for the job, and now she's actively soliciting them. So got into her interview process not because they saw her profile and called her, but rather the other way around, which is not a bad strategy. But for her to, I guess you have to be careful about expecting an interview without them deciding that you're a good fit. There's kind of maybe a more effective way that she could have gone about doing that. Nonetheless, she gets this call. They put it on the guy's calendar. So the hiring team on some level, I don't know if the hiring manager told the recruiting person, hey, like, can you vet this person and see if they look good? But clearly the hiring person, the recruiter or the human resource person, did not see something that they aligned with because he didn't even interview her. So I understand why she's frustrated.
First of all, nobody has applied for this role because I've been making sure that nobody's applying, or at least on LinkedIn that I can see. And it's been posted for at least 2 months now. I hit every single qualification. So it's like, can we not just bend the rules a little bit? And
okay, so let's talk quickly about LinkedIn and the number of applicants. There's no way that she could know how many applicants they actually have. There is a possibility that this role was posted and reposted. That does happen. They may be looking for something very specific. They may not be highly motivated in today's job market. Companies are not as motivated to make hiring decisions as they maybe used to be. There's kind of a reluctance there. But she doesn't know how many people are applying for this job. And here's the thing about LinkedIn's applications. When you see the number next to a job posting on LinkedIn, how many applicants there are, that number is actually really misleading. It could be, how they track it is if you click on the link on the apply button and you get rerouted to wherever that link reroutes you to, it actually shows as one applicant. So in theory, if a job posting on LinkedIn showed 1,000 applicants, that's just the number of people who clicked into the link. Doesn't mean that they actually completed the application, are considered an active applicant, but rather just the number of people who simply clicked on the link. So we don't know how many candidates are actually in process. Additionally, they're likely recruiting in a lot of different areas. There's other job boards that they might have their stuff up on. They likely have internal applicants. They might likely have employer referrals. They also are likely doing their own sourcing activities. They're going in and finding their own candidates. So they're doing targeted outreach to candidates who very closely match what they're looking for the role. And it's usually geographic region is going to be play a factor in it. But that being said, if the job has been up for 2 months and it only has shows 8 people have clicked into it, they may have a volume issue. But it sounds like they're not a motivated employer. That's what it sounds like to me.
I'm just really upset. I'm just really upset because the last job that I interviewed for, they decided to cancel the position right after they had I had finished all the interviews, and they said, if we uncancel it, it's you. And it's just like, why does nothing work out?
Does that feedback really help anybody if they say, well, if we could hire this position, we would actually hire you. You're number one. Is that beneficial to people to know? Is it something that they're just saying to everybody? I think so many people have experienced that exact thing. And this is why people are so frustrated. There is a seemingly perfect opportunity out there where you feel like you've got the perfect background and you can't even get them to take you seriously and consider you. And then you wonder, what are they even doing? And you start to wonder how many of these jobs are fake or are ghost jobs, or maybe even more likely, just a hiring team that's not real motivated. They're putting out a job, and then if they find the perfect fit, they find it. Or in some cases, I've had jobs be posted, hiring teams go a long period of time without hiring it, and then they realize we actually don't need this position to begin with, so they can end up canceling the job posting, or it's been open for so long that some different direction in the business happens, they decide to take that headcount and turn it into a totally different job, or the job just evolves into something different. They thought they wanted something in the beginning, but it actually changed over time. So these are all things that factor into this extreme level of frustration for the job seeker, because you're just seeing a job, you just want the job, you're doing everything you can to get the job, and you're repeatedly being stonewalled and repeatedly being blocked. And I completely understand the frustration that she's experiencing. It's very valid. This is not a normal job market. We have a lot more competition. We've got companies that are not willing to pull the trigger on job offers, and I just don't know when this is going to change. If it's going to change, I do feel that careers have taken a turn. Like something happened in. I've seen some videos about people talking about how reality has changed. Like people are no longer feeling like we're on the same timeline since 2020. Like something fractured and went off in a different direction. And I honestly see the same signs in the job market. I wonder if something fractured in the timeline where we are on I don't know what kind of timeline we're on, but it just feels different like this job market feels different. It feels like, where are we heading with this? And these types of stories are just more and more common. And the reason why I share these types of stories is because I want people to realize you're not alone. The feelings that you're feeling are very valid. The feelings that you're feeling do not equate to your self-worth, your ability, your experience, your skill, what you've done in your past. That stuff is not invalidated. You're just dealing with a job market that is very transactional in nature, and it's no longer realistic to expect careers to look like they used to. And that's a big disconnect for people. We just want a sense of purpose, a sense of belonging, a sense of value, and we're just not seeing it. And unfortunately, it's like there's almost like a level of like our companies psychopathic or sociopathic. I don't know what word I'm looking for, but it feels like that. It feels like that's where we are in the job market. If you need help actually learning how to market yourself better, if that's something that you're feeling like maybe you're struggling in, it's actually what I specialize in. And I've got a website called lifeafterlayoff.com, which is loaded with a lot of free information on how to approach your job search, how to approach your career with more strategy. And I do share my deepest and most intimate knowledge in the form of some training courses. And the first obviously being resume writing. So Resume Rocket Fuel teaches you exactly how to write a resume that's going to give you a better chance at getting into these interview processes where the hiring teams aren't going to just immediately dismiss you, like unfortunately she's experienced in this video. And once you get the interview, you want to make sure that you know exactly what it is that you're doing so you don't make some mistakes that are avoidable. And that's where the Ultimate Job Seeker Bootcamp comes in. It breaks down the entirety of a job search process, like how I would approach my job search. And what we do is we break it down individually. Each round give you tips, techniques, strategies to be the highest possible, like we and what we do is we break down each round of the interview process. We give you tips, techniques, strategies for being able to deliver answers that are as aligned as possible to what the hiring teams are looking for to give you the best chance of getting the offer. And of course, we teach you how to negotiate the offer once that's done. Then leveraging targeted networking, using the LinkedIn platform to your advantage as a job seeker. There is an art and a skill to this, and there's some subtleties and nuance. And I break that down in great detail in the course Unlocking LinkedIn. So if you're interested in any of those, you can check those out on my website, alifeafterlayoff.com. And if you want more personalized help, I do offer some limited one-on-one coaching. You can reach me through my website for that as well. Anyway, I hope that you found this video to be helpful. I'll continue to look for stories of job seekers, being able to bring their voices forward, amplify them a little bit, and continue to shed light on a job market that it sucks, guys. The job market stinks. It's not you, it's them. It's the way things are structured right now. So don't lose hope. Appreciate you watching. We'll see you on the next one.